Welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown, the podcast where we watch scary movies so you don't have to.
From award-winning to completely unknown, we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Solange Hummel.
Now, warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously as we take these movies seriously.
Are you in danger, Soli?
Do you want me to blink twice if I am?
No one would know on the podcast unless they listen real close.
Well, I'm going to put my eyes right by the microphone. Ready?
ASMR.
Did you hear it?
I don't think that was audible.
I don't think it was. It's not even audible inside my own head.
Well, it's more of a visual thing, which is good for the visual medium of film, where we watched Blink Twice from 2024.
Yes, it had Channing Tatum. No, Channing Tatum.
Yep. He must have for the role.
I don't know what his name actually is.
You were so close.
Tatum Shading? I don't actually know.
You now put all of the syllables in different places except where they belong.
I don't know.
Ingtan Chanum?
Okay, so it's clearly what's left.
What's left?
Tatum Channing. No.
You actually flipped his name around.
Channing Tatum. There it is. There it is. I found it. Channing Tatum. Oh my god. I'm not going to be able to say it again. So, it stars Channing Tatum and Naomi Ackie, and it was written and directed by Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah. Also, a bunch of kind of interesting stars to have in there that we were like, oh, hey, there. There was Christian Slater. There was Haley Joel Osment. And there was maybe.
Okay, you have to give her real name too, otherwise it's sexist.
No, her last name is weirdly pronounced. It's Alia Shawkat or something like that, but it's spelled Shawkat.
Yes.
But I don't know how to actually say it.
Yeah, it was a lot of interesting people in this movie, and I think it's particularly interesting the men who were willing to play the roles that they played in this movie, because I think in this day and age, in order to play the roles that like Tatum and Slater and Osment played, they have to be very confident that they haven't done any of the things that are being portrayed in this movie and also like exposed in our current society. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that playing these roles is a guarantee that these are good guys who've never done anything wrong. Yeah. I don't know that there are.
That's the out. Oh no, that was just a role I played.
Yeah.
You must be confused.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that by any means. I'm just saying playing these roles is putting a target on your back in terms of, people are going to see this movie and then everyone wants to be the one who, outs the hypocrisy, right? So I think that playing these roles would make people look into their history more deeply and make it more likely that something would come to light. So, I think if you were a self-aware man in Hollywood, you probably would not have agreed to play this role if you knew that you had a bunch of skeletons in your closet that were going to come out as you did the press junket for this movie. You know what I mean?
It's possible. I don't know. I can also see the idea that you'd be like, yeah, this is just me doing more of my great feminism that I do.
I mean, that's definitely a common argument. That's a common defense when the closets get opened and the skeletons get pulled out, for sure. Like, we've definitely heard that from Joss Whedon. We've heard that from Neil Gaiman. We've heard that from Louis C.K. Like, that is definitely a very like, no, I'm a feminist. Haven't you seen my body of work where I talk about how great strong women are?
Yeah.
Whatever. But I just, and like I said, no guarantee. Like, I'm not saying Christian Slater is the perfect man or Channing Tatum has no skeletons in his closet. I'm just saying it made me think about, kind of that aspect of what it means to take roles in Hollywood.
Yeah. To discuss what such a role is, this is a Jeffrey Epstein movie. They have their island where they abuse, sexually assault women.
Yes, this movie, is very much referencing Epstein's island. It also, or to me, it felt like it had shades of that guy in France who was drugging his wife and like inviting hundreds of men to come do bad things to her.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. That's truly terrifying.
The trivia on IMDb for this movie said that the trial for that man, his name is Dominique Pellicot, started shortly after the movie was released. But that also, like in the States, the equivalent of that, I guess, or the situation that, kind of references the idea of drugging women would be Bill Cosby.
Good old Cosby.
This was a hard movie to watch in the sense that it is all about the abuse of power dynamics and especially using the kinds of things that not only is there a power dynamic difference because of the, socioeconomic status and popularity and, male versus female, all of that, but there's also the drugging aspect. There, the perfume made by the flower that was only found on this island that caused you to forget what was happening to you.
Yes, that's the big twist to the whole thing, because let me get into my big complaint, which is that like half this movie is just repeated, just party scenes. Like they're trying to get across the idea that this is going on and is very much just repeating because later we find out it's repeating because everyone's forgetting everything. Mm-hmm. But it's just so many times over of scenes of just them lounging in the pool, drinking, smoking,
dancing.
And it goes on way too long with that. I just was so sick of it. The thing is, they included so many of those because maybe every other one of them had some little hint in it that something was off. And so you're like, oh, there's a little clue, but it was just so much to get to the little clues. I feel like maybe they could have had some kind of ongoing narrative throughout that so that there was something to watch besides just repeating. But it was just repeating.
I wonder if the ongoing narrative for some people isn't, look, that looks like fun. That's the kind of party I want to be at. I want to be somewhere. Well, because the hints that there's something wrong are, like you said, kind of few and far between. Yeah. And I think there's a pretty significant chunk of the world, and definitely the United States, especially amongst young people.
Oh, young people.
Who think the idea of a never-ending party on an island where you just have all the food and drinks and drugs and fancy clothes and everything that you ever wanted is, like, that's an ideal scenario. And so I think the idea was that these things were so great that for a long time, no one questioned what was happening, why they were there for so long. And even when there were hints that were coming up that something was wrong, a lot of them, even when they were flat out told there's something bad happening here, this is a problem, they were just like, I don't care. Yeah. And in fact, one of the famous people we did not mention yet is Gina Davis, who is like the personal assistant to the Channing Tatum character, whose name is Slater, which is confusing since there's also an actor whose last name is Slater. This big bad guy has this female personal assistant. And when she is because they find out that there's this venom that, like, if you drink the venom, it counteracts the memory destroying qualities of the perfume. Mm-hmm. And when they bring her memory back, she's ticked. She's like, I don't want to know any of this. I am using the perfume so I don't have to think about any of this, which is a very pointed,
that's a social commentary.
Yes, that is a thing. And I think that's that is what the Me Too movement has been up against, is not just the men who are doing bad things to women, but the women and everyone else in society, you know, the not doing bad things men who are just like, I don't want to think about this. Yeah. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm going to pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around these days.
Yeah. So, okay, were there parts of the movie that you felt worked well?
That's the thing, is I think the core structure of the movie, the idea that everybody's forgetting, and, you know, that's the terror of that, you know, you gradually find out that you've been missing big chunks of your life and what happened during those chunks. That's really cool. And I think it was not executed really well because we had to just sit and watch them party so much.
You think it was like an editing issue? I think part of it is a difference in how, you know, what it makes the story interesting between what you think and what perhaps Zoe Kravitz thinks. But I mean, do you think there could have been a tighter editing where things happened in every one of those scenes that brought the viewer along faster?
I don't know what, because, you know, eventually after the 10th time around, and there were easily 10 of these days, it got to the point where I'm like, these people have been gone for a really long time. What's happening? And I started wondering, you know, is there something supernatural in this movie? You know, they're just like, when you're on this island, the day just repeats or whatever. But it was not that. But I think it was just too many repeats. And I don't know, it somehow didn't hold, like you said, with it not having more clues added in rapidly enough. It was not holding my interest in this problem.
Well, because the tension of a movie like that, where there are a lot of questions, the tension building, for me at least, is predicated on I'm getting a little more information all the time, and I'm adding it to the things I already know, and I'm progressing as a viewer in my understanding of what's happening, even if the characters are not.
Right.
It's fine that the characters weren't necessarily realizing anything until later, but I, as the viewer, in each scene feel like I need to learn something new. Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I feel like they probably think they did that because, I mean, when I think about it, there's all kinds of scenes where, like, she goes and investigates his private office or whatever, and she finds different little things, and, you know, and then on various days, like, somebody will have an injury of some kind that they don't know where it came from. So those are all little clues, but it just went on for too long. Like, that stuff is all great. It's just too long.
Yeah. So the twist of there's something funky happening on this island is foreshadowed pretty heavily, right? Like, I don't think there's anyone who watches a movie knowing that it's billed as like a thriller suspense kind of movie, sees two young women get invited by a bunch of men they don't know to go to an island where no one knows where they are and all that. I don't think there's anybody who watched that and was like, that's fine. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to them. Now, what did you think of the real twist at the end? Well, there were a number of twists at the end. First of all, the one where Frida realizes this isn't even the first time she's been to this island and gone through this process. Like, that it happened to her once and she got sent home afterwards, and then here she is back again because her memory was so wiped that she didn't even know she didn't even remember she knew this guy, that she had ever met this guy before.
I have a question about that, just because why would they let anyone leave? Like, the whole point, they show no compunction about killing people. And I feel like these people who don't know anybody, I don't know. It seems very risky.
Wait, though, do they show no compunction about killing everybody? Or did everybody end up dead in this movie because the women realized what was going on and started killing everybody?
Definitely. But
were all the people who went to this island dead?
I don't know. We don't know about any of them. I'm just saying they killed Maybe as soon as, like, she was remembering things. They're like, oh, this is no good. Get rid of her.
Oh, yeah, because she got bit by the snake. See, I think they were only killing people if something happened, because they had so much confidence in their, flower perfume that these memories would not, under any circumstances, come back unless they were exposed to this venom.
Yeah, that's fine. It felt not in control enough for me.
Okay.
But I liked, the twist because when you go back to the beginning of the movie, she's obsessed with Slater. She has like a shrine on her wall of him, and like, he's the celebrity that she's crazy about. And that makes sense. Like she probably wasn't like that before, but there's something in her brain that's going, this guy, what's about him? And that was a fun little connection. Do want to say, though,
yes,
the grand finale of the movie.
Yes, the final twist, which is foreshadowed very early on when she says to her friend, success is the best revenge.
Not very plausible that you could maintain control over this man and take over his life and his entire empire just by slipping him a Mickey.
I mean, is it any less plausible than the fact that these men took over all these women's minds and controlled them and had no consequences or any risk factor? Like,
yeah, because they were the power guys and the girls were the nobodies.
So you're suggesting that it's not so much that he wouldn't be controlled, it's that there would be so many people in his life who would be like, why are you so different now?
Well, that and, like when she tries to sign over his bank accounts and stuff, people are like, hey, what's going on? And like his brother-in-law is like, wait a second, dude, what are you doing? This is somebody who interacts with lots of people and has, lawyers and accountants and all these people managing him. And you don't just get to slide in there. I mean, I know... Especially
as a woman. Yeah. They'd be like, no, we're not giving you all this power and control.
I'm sure, it comes around to like, oh, this is my wife. I'm taking care of her and all that. But it's just not plausible. I disapprove. Yeah. And also, I'm a fan of, if they ended it at 2 or 3 minutes sooner, just sitting on the island and watching it burn. Like, that's... Yeah. So many movies end like that. And I don't mind it.
Yeah. Or even just a hint of like that she has a plan and then, kind of leaving it open-ended. I see what you're saying about it being kind of implausible.
I do like that she turned it around on him and used it on him.
So here's the thing. I do like it as revenge porn, I guess. Like, no, that's not meaning it the way that term is normally used, I guess. That's maybe not that. But like, I like it as a like, yeah, get him kind of movie. Like the feeling that it gives me, the feeling of like power and being able to stand up for myself and that sort of thing. And that I'm sure it does for other women as well. What I don't love, like the really like the deeply ethical part of myself is like, well, now she's just as bad as he is.
Oh yeah. She was
like, I don't love that.
Not just as bad, I wouldn't say.
No,
but
okay.
Bad,
no.
Definitely. And that is how I felt in the ending. I'm like, oh, she's not a great person.
Yeah. But, well, honestly, throughout the movie, she was never portrayed as a super great person.
She was never a good
She was not
person.
a highly ethical person to begin with. So this was in character for her. I guess I was like, well, I don't like you either. Yeah. Like there were no heroes in this movie, which is fine. But there was a little part of me that was sort of like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. You mentioned the revenge aspect, and I just wanted to say there's an interesting thing in this movie where at the end of the movie, the girls who have figured out the venom thing trick the other girls into drinking venom, and it's almost like the opposite of other movies. I like doing that these days. I'm converting movies into opposites of other movies. Where they're all taking a drug, the venom, and it turns them into murderous monsters. Except in this case, it's that it fixes their memories and they realize what danger they're in and they go on a killing spree. And it was really a killing spree. Like this just crazy violent. They're running around murdering everybody. I don't know. It's weird because it's like I think of so many other movies where it's like basically a zombie movie, This substance has made them into mindless zombies that are murdering everyone, except it's not. It actually made them unmindless and unzombie, and therefore they murdered everyone. Yeah. It's interesting to watch.
Well, I mean, I think that speaks very strongly to what Kravitz was trying to say with the movie, which is, or one of the things that she was trying to point out with the movie, which is the men who have been participating in this sort of behavior because our culture, our society has allowed them to continue to participate in this kind of behavior are deeply motivated to continue the behavior. Because if it stops, all of the people they have been controlling, they know what's going to happen. Like, they know that if I lose control over this person I have been abusing for all this time, I'm going to have to face some consequences. They're not going to be the consequences that they should face. Like, never anything as major as they should face. Never anything like this movie. But there is a fear in them that if I ever stop doing the thing that I am doing, the consequences of the person I've been controlling regaining control and regaining their autonomy will be devastating to me.
Yeah, and it was.
And it was. And I think in the world today also, it has been for some people to some extent. And I think it's getting more and more for some people to some extent. I don't know. It just is an interesting, like, spotlight, I guess, on this aspect of kind of the Me Too movement and the fact that women are feeling more empowered to speak out about what's been happening to them in some places.
I've mentioned my big problem with the repetition of the partying and how uninteresting that was for me. And that is a big chunk of the movie, and that detracts from my rating. But other than that, I feel like it was a good movie. It was very interesting to see how that all worked out. It wasn't a big surprise in terms of how the twist worked out. It kind of made sense, but it took some time to get there. So yeah, it was good. So I enjoyed it, except for that repetition, and the repetition was a big chunk. So big subtraction. I'll say this is 3 Polaroid cameras out of 5 for me. It was not too bad.
Okay. I don't disagree with any of the things that you said in terms of the problems of the movie. And I absolutely 100% agree that this was a horror film. I think, particularly as a woman watching this, I'm like, this is horror. This is what horror is. And I find it very interesting that it has thriller and suspense as its tags instead of horror, because there is one perspective from which this is a thrilling, suspenseful movie, and one perspective from which this is a horrific movie. And that I didn't really think about until you were talking about it. I'm like, I find that fascinating. There are probably some other reasons why, like maybe Kravitz might have pushed, or the studio or whoever might have pushed for it to be billed one way instead of the other for audience reasons or whatever. I'm not saying that this is a straight up sexist decision, but it comes across as a little sexist. On the other hand, I think one of the reasons I'm going to score it higher than you do is because from my point of view, this movie is more thrilling as well at the end. Like, the fact that they get their revenge, the fact that these men get their comeuppance in really like aggressive, concrete, final ways is sort of the equivalent of like the MAGA Red Hatters who watch movies where a single person goes up against a government entity and, defeats them. Yeah. Like, it's that empowerment thing, right? Yeah. So I think...
And it's funny, it's kind of stops being horror at the point where all the gore and murder starts.
Absolutely. That's really interesting to think about, because that's the point where it becomes, oh, okay, now it's an empowerment film.
Yeah, this is a revenge.
But then that's, from the other perspective, that's where it starts to become a horror film. Like, oh no, we're now facing the consequences of our actions.
Oh no, the consequences of my actions.
So that whole thing it's very interesting how the perspective really matters and what kind of movie it is at any given point. And I think because of that, I felt energized at the end. It was very gory and very graphic. And I didn't necessarily love that piece of it. Like, that's not my favorite thing about horror movies. But the fact that power that was stolen is taken back, is regained, is a very important motif. And I think is something that is becoming more popular as the fact that women watch movies and have their own unique perspective becomes more something that Hollywood is acknowledging. So I think I would give this 4 Polaroid cameras out of 5, mostly because I really enjoyed it. There are things you could pick apart with it. There are silly mistakes. Like, I didn't realize this until I was reading IMDb, but the fact that, you know, the snakes on the island are all constrictors. They're pythons. So they don't have venom. They squeeze their victims to death. Like, the whole movie falls apart when you realize that, because it's their venom that counters the memory loss.
I mean, that's like saying Channing Tatum can't really fly, you know? I mean, not that he flies in it. Okay. It's like saying Robert Downey Jr. can't really build a robot suit, you know?
I mean,
those are actor snakes portraying a role. Maybe they're taking jobs that belong to venomous snakes. This
is what I'm saying. Like, where's the ASP union is all I'm wondering. You know, it's like silly things like that, but this is not a movie that I want to pick apart as I watch. This is a movie that I just want to watch and see it play out. And it was slow, but I don't think I was as bothered by how slow it was. I think I was kind of more into just the like, ooh, party vibe.
See, I'm not into a party vibe.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Fight the horror of a world gone mad.
I think the hot political take of this movie has been discussed at length already. I think the idea of the power imbalances between men and women in general, and specifically within the entertainment industry and within that, like, rich men taking advantage of any young women who are hoping to gain something from being in their orbit. I think all of that is a major part of the political environment that we live in right now. I think this movie does a really good job of kind of skewering some of those things and exposing some of those things. Particularly, something we haven't mentioned yet is that it's not just young women who get taken to this island.
Yeah.
There is also a young man there, and we don't realize until very late in the movie that he's not one of the men who regularly goes to the island and takes advantage of the women. He's there to be taken advantage of. His memory has been wiped as well.
His memory has been wiped, but I don't think he was used in the way they were.
No, I think he was.
I mean, that's what I would have expected, but from the way things played out, it seemed like he was just on the men's side, but when he realized that it was bad, they were like, oh, that's not okay, we're going to wipe his memory.
The only evidence that I have to argue against that is there is one scene where there's like, you know, it's one of those like party scenes descending into chaos where it's starting to show us what's really happening, and he is being chased by one of the other men. While everyone else, you know, all the women are being attacked by men, he is being chased in the background. And to me, that meant he was being chased and he was also going to be attacked in the same way.
I mean, that's
I could be wrong.
What I expected from the movie, but then it didn't seem like that. And maybe that's Hollywood backing away from that.
I wonder how much of that was like, ooh, you know, calling out the homosexual aspect of sexual assault is a bridge too far for this movie. I don't know. The other moment that sort of backs up that idea is that, when everything starts to go down and like the men are being attacked, I think he just, with his memory wiped, relates to the men, thinks he's one of the men. And so when the men are all being attacked by the women and being accused of these terrible things, he asks the main character, he asks him, what did I do? And the main character says nothing.
Yeah.
And I think to me, that was sort of, and it was, I read it and maybe I put this in myself, but I saw that nothing as sort of like a, yeah, you don't realize, kind of like with a wink and a nod sort of look.
But he made a point of saying, you did nothing. You could have helped people and you did nothing. And that's bad. It was kind of the classic cliche.
Yeah.
And that kind of implies that he was kind of like a bystander, effectively.
Did he? So I remember that now. And I feel like maybe.
Oh, your memory is back?
No, I'm wondering, was that, did his memory come back and then after that he also chose not to help the women, because maybe that's the thing. Like maybe it's you didn't do anything wrong in the first place because you were here as a victim, but also when you realized people were being victimized, you opted not to protect anyone in order to protect yourself, but maybe not.
I don't think he ever got his memory back because nobody gave him any venom because they had no reason to think he needed some venom.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it could go either way, but
interesting.
So anyway, my original point there was, that's yet another aspect of what's going on, that men are also assaulted, and that is even more ignored, and like, we don't want to look at that. Movie. Yeah, even by this movie, slightly. So I think that's something we all need to be paying attention to and, advocating for, is not allowing people to abuse power. And there's obviously a broader understanding of that sentence under the current administration as well. But that's that.
Well, let's forget about this movie.
Spray that perfume on me.
And jump into another one next week.
All right. See you there.
See ya.
Bye.
What numbers are even?
Nobody knows. It's a mystery.
Canceled education, and now we don't know which ones are even.